My parents made me sleep on the floor. So my pregnant sister could have my bed. So I moved out and never told them where I went. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I felt like a guest in my own family. I don't mean that in some dramatic teenage angst kind of way. I mean it literally. Every inch of our house screamed Sarah. Her trophies lined the hallway, her framed photos covered the living room walls, and her name came up in every conversation like she was the only thing worth celebrating. She's my older sister. 2 years older, perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect life. At least, that's how my parents told the story. Meanwhile, I was the difficult one. The kid who talked back when things felt unfair. The one who didn't smile enough in family pictures or who always made everything about himself. If something went missing, it was my fault. If there was tension in the house, somehow it was because of my attitude. I learned early on that the easiest way to survive was to stay quiet, blend into the background like furniture. I still remember one night when I was 16. Sarah came home late from a party smelling like vodka. Dad just sighed and said, "Teenagers make mistakes." A week later, I missed curfew by 10 minutes because of traffic, and he grounded me for a month. That was my family in a nutshell. Sarah got sympathy. I got lectures. Birthdays were the same story. Mine were simple family dinners while hers turned into full-blown events. Balloons, decorations, friends, expensive cakes. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need attention to feel loved. But deep down, it hurt. It always did. Over time, I learned to fade out completely. Just do my chores, go to work, keep my head down. I convinced myself that being invisible was safer than being a disappointment. But I had no idea that invisibility would eventually turn into something worse, something that would make me question whether I even belonged in that house at all. It happened during a Sunday dinner, the kind where my parents went all out because Sarah was visiting. I was halfway through my mashed potatoes when she stood up, her voice trembling but excited, and said, "I have some news." Mom's hand immediately flew to her mouth like she already knew. Sarah smiled and said, "I'm pregnant." The room exploded with cheers. Mom started crying. Dad jumped up to hug her, and within seconds the conversation turned into baby names, nursery colors, and how miraculous it all was. I clapped too, because what else could I do? But inside, there was a sinking feeling. A quiet voice whispering that my life was about to shrink even more. Family supports. Family, Mom said, looking directly at me. Especially when they're bringing new life into the world. I laughed awkwardly, thinking she meant helping out here and there. But when Dad nodded and added, "We'll all need to make sacrifices," the unease grew stronger. They didn't say it outright then, but I could already feel the unspoken part. My sacrifices always come first. The following days were filled with phone calls, baby registries, and endless talk about preparing the home. Sarah visited constantly, glowing and spoiled, while I became the background noise to her excitement. She'd pat her stomach and say things like, "You'll finally be an uncle. Maybe this will teach you responsibility." I bit my tongue every time. At first I tried to be happy for her. I really did. But every time I saw my parents doting on her, buying her things, cooking her favorite meals, it became harder to ignore that same old ache. The same old reminder, her needs were urgent, mine were optional. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid, that I could handle being overlooked. I didn't realize that this celebration was just the calm before a storm that would completely erase whatever place I had left in that house. And it all started with one sentence from Mom that week. "Sarah will be staying with us for a while." When Mom first said Sarah would stay with us for a while, I thought she meant a few nights, maybe a week tops. I didn't expect to come home one afternoon to find my bedroom door wide open, my things in boxes, and Sarah sitting cross-legged on my bed like she owned the place. She looked up with that same smug grin she'd had since childhood. "Hope you don't mind," she said casually, scrolling through her phone. "Mom and Dad thought it'd be better for the baby if I stayed in the bigger room." I froze. My room wasn't just a room. It was the only space in the house that actually felt mine. My books, my computer, my small desk where I studied late into the night, all of it had been moved out. Where am I supposed to sleep? I asked, my voice already shaking. Mom appeared in the doorway holding folded sheets. "Oh, honey, it's just temporary. You can take the couch for now. Sarah needs a calm, comfortable environment." I remember staring at the couch that night, lumpy, too short, the springs digging into my back, while hearing Sarah laugh upstairs. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me that my life had literally been boxed up for her comfort. Dad tried to downplay it, saying, "Don't be dramatic. You're young, you can handle a little inconvenience." But it wasn't little. It was another reminder that I didn't matter, not even enough to keep a place to sleep. The first few nights, I tried to convince myself it wouldn't last long, that once the baby came, she'd move out and things would go back to normal. But somewhere deep down, I already knew better, because in my family, nothing ever went back to normal, and the next change they made proved that losing my room was just the beginning. It didn't take long before even the couch wasn't mine anymore. One night, I came home from my late shift to find Sarah's boyfriend, Daniel, sprawled out on it, snoring, a half-eaten bowl of popcorn on the floor. My blanket was draped over him. When I asked what he was doing there, Sarah just rolled her eyes and said, "He's staying for a few days. Don't make a big deal, okay? The baby needs stability." I turned to my parents, expecting at least a hint of support. Mom sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Honey, Sarah's pregnant. Daniel's here to help her. Can't you just sleep in the hallway for now?" I actually laughed at first. I thought she was joking. But then Dad showed me a thin mat rolled up against the wall. My new bed. "It's just until things settle," he said. His tone made it clear there was no room for negotiation. So that night I laid down in the narrow hallway, my back pressed against the cold floorboards, staring up at the ceiling. I could hear Sarah and Daniel's muffled laughter from my room. Every sound drilled into me, her footsteps, the bed creaking, the soft music playing. It wasn't just noise. It was humiliation echoing through the house. Days turned into weeks. The mat flattened until I could feel every crack beneath it. I started waking up sore, my neck stiff, my patience thinner than ever. Whenever I tried to bring it up, Mom would just say, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Or, "Your sister's going through a lot. Be grateful you have a roof." That word, grateful, made me sick. I was supposed to be grateful for sleeping on a hallway floor in my own home. I began counting the nights, like a prisoner marking walls, waiting for an end that wasn't coming, and then one morning, when I saw what Sarah's boyfriend did with my last bit of comfort, something inside me finally cracked. That was the day everything started to change. It happened early one morning. I'd barely slept, my back aching from the hardwood floor. As I dragged myself up, I noticed my blanket was missing. For a second, I thought maybe I'd kicked it aside in my sleep, until I glanced into the living room. There was Daniel, lying comfortably on the couch, wrapped in it. That stupid blanket was the last thing I had left from my room. It wasn't fancy, just a faded blue throw I'd had since college. But it was mine. Seeing him use it like a rag, crumbs all over it, something snapped inside me. "Hey," I said sharply. "That's mine." He blinked at me, half awake. "Relax, man. It's just a blanket." Before I could answer, Sarah came downstairs in her robe, rubbing her belly like she owned the air around her. "What's going on now?" She groaned. "What's going on," I shot back, "is that I'm sick of being treated like a stray dog in this house." Mom appeared from the kitchen, her voice tight with irritation. "Lower your tone. Your sister's pregnant." I turned to her, shaking. "I don't care. You kicked me out of my own room, made me sleep on the floor, and now he's using my stuff like I don't exist." Dad's voice boomed from behind me. "Watch how you talk to your mother." I looked at all of them, their faces cold, unified against me. And something inside me finally died. "You know what?" I said quietly. "You all win. You always do." No one spoke as I walked past them and stepped outside into the freezing morning air. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but I stood there barefoot, feeling the gravel dig into my feet. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was empty. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just about losing space. I'd lost my place in their hearts a long time ago. And that night, I decided I was done living like a ghost in my own home. That morning, as I sat on the curb outside our house watching the sunrise, something inside me shifted. I wasn't crying or raging anymore. I just felt cold clarity. For years, I'd waited for them to see me, to treat me like family. But it finally hit me. They never would. No apology, no gesture would fix what they'd broken. So I decided to disappear. It wasn't a dramatic movie-style decision. It was quiet, calculated. I started saving every penny from my part-time job at the hardware store. I ate cheap, stopped going out, and used the free Wi-Fi at work to scroll through rental ads in nearby cities. I couldn't tell anyone. If my parents found out, they'd guilt me into staying. At night, I'd pack small things, my clothes, a laptop, a few books, hiding them in a duffel bag under the hallway mat I slept on. Every time I zipped it up, I imagined walking away for good. The thought kept me alive. Meanwhile, Mom kept piling on chores. "Since you're not paying rent, you should at least help around the house," she'd say, while Sarah and Daniel lounged in my room watching TV. Dad barely spoke to me unless it was to remind me how selfish I'd become lately. Their words didn't sting anymore. They just confirmed what I already knew. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the hallway mirror. Dark circles, blank expression, someone I barely recognized. But behind that emptiness was a spark of resolve. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't looking for closure. I just wanted peace. And I knew the only way to get it was to vanish before they realized how serious I was. So I set a date. 2 weeks from then. One final night under that roof. One last time hearing their voices. And when that night came, I made sure no one even heard the door close behind me. It was 2:07 a.m. when I finally left. I remember because I stared at the glowing red digits on my phone for a long time before standing up. The house was silent. The kind of silence that hums in your ears. I moved carefully, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, every step rehearsed 100 times in my mind. The hallway light flickered once, just like it always did, casting a pale shadow over the boxes that used to hold my things. I glanced toward my old bedroom, her bedroom now, and saw the faint light of a baby monitor blinking on the nightstand. The sound of Sarah's soft snoring came through the cracked door, mixed with Daniel's heavier breaths. That room, once filled with my posters, my desk, my books, now smelled like baby powder and someone else's future. I tiptoed through the kitchen, pausing only when the floorboards groaned under my weight. For a moment I half expected Mom to come out yelling, "Where are you going?" But nothing. Not a sound. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock above the dining table. By the time I reached the front door, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the handle. There was a part of me, the small, desperate part, that wanted someone to stop me. To say, "Don't go. We're sorry," but I knew no one would. Not for me, so I stepped out into the cold. The air was sharp and clean, like freedom cutting through my lungs. I walked down the street barefoot, my shoes dangling from my hand to keep them quiet. The stars above me looked distant but steady, like something finally constant in my life. When I reached the bus stop, I turned back one last time. The house stood dark and still. No lights flickered on. No one noticed I was gone, and for the first time in my life, that realization didn't hurt. It felt like release, but I had no idea how hard it would be to build a life from nothing, or how long it would take before they even realized I'd disappeared. The bus dropped me off in a neighboring city just as the sun came up. I had 2 bags, $200, and no plan beyond not going back. I found a cheap room in an old boarding house, peeling wallpaper, a single bed, a window that barely shut. But it was mine. That first night, I lay down on the thin mattress and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety. No footsteps outside my door. No voices telling me to give up my space. Just silence and air that finally belonged to me. The first few weeks were rough. I got a job unloading trucks at a warehouse during the day and washed dishes at a diner at night. My hands were always sore, my back constantly aching, But every time I slid the key into my own door, I smiled. Independence hurt, but it was the kind of pain that felt like healing. I cut off every trace of my old life, deleted my social media, changed my phone number. When my boss asked where I was from, I just shrugged and said, "Nowhere special." It became easier to pretend I didn't have a family than to explain why they never called. Sometimes, though, when I'd see families laughing at the diner or hear coworkers talking about visiting home for the holidays, a dull ache would rise in my chest. I'd push it down, reminding myself what home meant for me. A cold floor and a family that saw me as disposable. Months passed, and I started to rebuild. I saved enough to buy a small used laptop, started learning graphic design online, and dreamed about something more than survival. But the strangest part wasn't how much I missed them. It was realizing they hadn't even noticed I was gone. No calls, no messages, no search. And that silence told me everything I needed to know about where I truly stood in their world. 3 months passed before I finally accepted that no one was coming for me. Not a text, not a missed call, not even a post online asking if anyone had seen me. It was like I'd been erased, and my family just kept going without skipping a beat. At first it stung. I'd imagined Mom crying, Dad searching, Sarah realizing what they'd done. But no, nothing. Just silence that grew heavier with every sunrise. One afternoon at work, my phone buzzed with a message from an old friend, Jake. We hadn't talked in ages, but his text was short. "Hey, your parents told people you ran off because you couldn't handle responsibility. That true?" I just stared at the screen, numb. They weren't worried. They were rewriting the story, turning me into the villain even after I was gone. That night I sat in my tiny room and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I'd given everything to a family that couldn't even grant me the dignity of honesty. They'd rather paint me as weak than admit they broke me. I opened my old photo folder, scrolling through pictures of family dinners, birthdays, vacations. In every shot, Sarah was front and center, smiling, radiant, while I stood at the edge, half cropped out or looking away. It hit me then. I'd always been an extra in their story. Never the son, never the brother. Just the placeholder between their moments, so I made it official. I deleted every photo, blocked their numbers, and erased their contact info from every account. It felt brutal, but also cleansing, like burning the last bridge to a house that was never mine. Still, a small part of me wondered if I'd ever get closure, if one day they'd realize what they'd done. But deep down, I already knew the truth. They'd never see it. They'd never see me. And just when I thought I was finally free from their shadows, a message appeared that would drag me right back into their world. It was a rainy Thursday night when it happened. I was finishing a late shift at the diner, wiping down tables as thunder rolled outside. My phone buzzed, a new message request on an old social account I'd forgotten to delete. When I saw the name, my stomach dropped. Sarah. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the notification, debating whether to open it. I told myself not to, that I didn't owe her a single second of my peace. But curiosity, or maybe old habit, won. I opened it. Her message was long, apologetic, desperate. She said Mom and Dad had changed after I left, that things had gotten toxic even for her. She and Daniel had broken up, and she was raising the baby alone. "I know I don't deserve it," she wrote, "but I could really use your help. You're the only one who ever cared." For a second, my heart twisted. The part of me that still remembered sharing toys, laughing as kids, wanted to reach out. But then I remembered the nights I lay awake on the cold floor while she slept in my bed. I remembered her voice telling me not to make a big deal when I lost my space, my comfort, my dignity. I typed out a dozen replies. Everything from, "You're on your own," to, "I forgive you." But in the end, I deleted them all. I didn't block her. I just left her message on read. The next day, I caught myself checking my phone, half expecting another message. None came, just silence. But it wasn't the same silence I'd known before. This one didn't hurt. It felt like closure. Still, deep down, I had a sinking feeling. If Sarah had found me, it meant my parents probably could too, and a few weeks later they did. In the worst possible way, it was a quiet afternoon at the warehouse when it happened. I was stacking boxes, lost in the rhythm of work, when my supervisor called out, "Hey, someone's here asking for you." I turned and froze. Standing by the entrance were my parents. My mother clutching her purse like a weapon, my father towering beside her with that same judgmental frown I'd seen my whole life. For a second, I honestly thought I was hallucinating. Mom's voice was sharp and cold. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My coworkers stopped what they were doing. The sound of pallets clattering to the floor echoed through the room. I felt my throat tighten as heat crawled up my neck. "What are you doing here?" I managed. Dad crossed his arms. "We raised you, fed you, gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? Running away and embarrassing the family? Embarrassing the family. That was it. Not are you okay? Not we missed you. Just reputation. Just shame." I tried to pull them aside, but Mom kept talking. "People are asking questions. Your sister's struggling, and you're out here playing the victim. Do you even care what we've been through?" That was the breaking point. Something in me snapped cleanly in half. My voice came out steady, but my hands were shaking. "What you've been through. I slept on the floor while you gave my room away. You called me selfish for wanting basic respect. You treated me like a burden. And now you show up here demanding something from me again?" The warehouse went dead silent. My dad's mouth opened, then closed. Mom's face twisted, searching for the right insult. But I didn't wait for it. I grabbed my bag and walked out the side door without looking back. My legs felt weak, my heart pounding. For the first time, I didn't care what they thought. I just wanted them out of my life. As the door slammed behind me, I realized I hadn't lost anything. They had, and what came after that moment was the kind of peace I'd been chasing my whole life. I didn't go back to the warehouse for the rest of that day. I just walked, for hours, through streets I barely knew, past crowds of strangers who didn't care who I was or what I'd been through. And strangely, that anonymity felt like the warmest embrace I'd ever known. I wasn't the ungrateful son, or the difficult child. I was just me. When I got home to my small rented room, I locked the door, sank onto the bed, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. No yelling, no guilt. No eyes rolling when I spoke, just quiet. The kind that feels earned. I picked up my phone and hovered over my contacts. Their numbers were still blocked, but I opened the list one last time, stared at it, and deleted them all. Every trace. It felt like cutting off oxygen to something toxic that had been poisoning me for years. The following months were the calmest of my life. I kept working, finished my online design course, and landed a junior position at a small agency. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I started going to therapy too, and for the first time, someone actually listened when I talked. No judgment, no dismissal, just understanding. Then one morning, months later, I got another message, this time from Sarah again. But it wasn't a plea. It was short. "Thank you for showing me it's okay to walk away. I finally left them too." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Somehow, that single line closed a chapter that had haunted me for years. Looking around my tiny apartment, sunlight spilling through the blinds, I realized I'd built something my family never gave me. Peace. They made me sleep on the floor like I didn't deserve space. But leaving them taught me the truth. I wasn't running away. I was rising. They pushed me down to the floor, but I used it as the ground to stand taller than they ever could.